Right, okay, so good afternoon everybody and welcome to today's webinar. We're very pleased to welcome Jason Williams from Crawford and Company, who'll be delivering this session today. So I'll shortly hand you over to him, but before I do, I just wanted to mention a few things. So firstly, for those of you who haven't attended one of our IOSH webinars, I'm Ben Pollard and I take care of the technical aspects of these sessions. So any problems, message me and I should try to assist as best as I can. So on your screen then, most likely located at the top left-hand side, you will notice a small bar with some written options on them, which are chat and Q&A. If you have any technical issues or audio problems and you need to message me at any point, please use the chat option. If you have any specific questions for Jason relating to the content of today's session, please use the Q&A option and ask your questions here. I will then run through all of these with Jason after his presentation is finished at the end, and we'll tackle as many questions as possible. So with all that said, I shall now hand you over to Jason, and I hope that you all enjoy the session.
Good afternoon, my name's Jason Williams and thank you for taking time to listen to me talk about the Construction Design Management Regulations 2015 and how they've applied to my working practices over the last couple of years. I work for a company called Crawford & Co. We are managers of insurance issues and claims throughout the UK. We actually are a worldwide company, but I only deal with the UK. As we are probably all aware that in the UK mainland on the 6th of April 2015, the regulations came in for construction design management and they were quite different from the ones we had previously dealt with in 2007. In Northern Ireland, they only brought these in last year, in the 1st of August, and they are still doing the how can I put it, getting used to period of dealing with the nuances and intricacies of the new regulations. The first thing I noticed when the new regulations came out, there was no approved code of practice. I know they revised this approximately 12 months later and chose on both times to not issue approved codes of practice and instead just to provide a guidance document, which I think we all know as L153, which is very unfortunate really because I feel an ACOP really helped us make decisions when we needed to, whereas a guidance document leaves it very objective to how we deal with things. Unfortunately, there has been prosecutions in the country and breaches as well. We've got over 20 prosecutions that have gone through the HSE and the courts and over 2,500 breaches of the CDM 215 regs within the last 12 months. There are more than these. These are just figures I've picked up over the last couple of months. The changes also brought in notifiable projects. Before it was quite straightforward over 30 days, but now it's a case of breaking it down into man days and how many operatives are working simultaneously on a site. The fines, well, what can I say about the fines? They're huge now. As we've probably seen on all our HSE documentation on their websites, IOSH magazines and the likes is just going through the roof, and I'm wondering how people are going to pay for that ultimately. We have something also called the Health and Safety Executive Fines. They're called fees for intervention. £129 an hour plus expenses at the moment. Very, very expensive in the long run. I'm wondering whether that's why they didn't do an ACOP, as they could find it easier to find fault with us, but that's just my opinion. In Northern Ireland, they have something called the HSE-NI. It's exactly the same as the Health and Safety Executive, but allows the Northern Ireland legislation a bit later on than ours. I also feel that the actual regulations have been brought in to suit larger sites where there's more of a gatekeeper approach. What happens there is nobody can go on sites until they've gone through the gatekeeper, which makes sure inductions are carried out, make sure everybody understands the rules and regulations of that site. Whereas the industry I'm in, the insurance refurbishment, we haven't got that luxury, unfortunately. Sometimes we have to look at working alongside the policyholder in their own house, their families, their pets, and making agreements with them and making sure this is all outlined in what's known as a construction phase plan. That's something I concentrate a lot on from my point of view. I want to make sure that the contractor is doing what he's saying in his construction phase plan, and then we monitor it from there to ensure that they are actually doing it. I must say the contractors on our network that we use have been, although a little bit difficult at first, once they understood the regulations, they were excellent, and we're finding that it's getting better day by day. They really have embraced it. HSE, well, yeah, they're stepping up their enforcement. I've gone to a lot of working well together events and found that they've been quite reasonable so far, and the cases that have been brought through to court have been justifiable and seems like they're doing the right thing. My little worry is the fees for intervention might just keep on escalating. Again, only my opinion. We will also find that there seems to be no record of notices of contravention and also letters that the HSE issue to companies. There's no way of recording that by the seams of it, and it's something that would be useful for us when we're vetting businesses, and also to give us a better outlook on what the problems are out there. I will now move on to the next slide, which outlines the CDM hierarchy as we see it. Clients, yes, we can have more than one client. Sometimes we have the insurance company and the policyholder. They in turn should issue in writing the intentions to use a principal designer or principal contractor. You only have to use a principal designer if there's more than one contractor. Now, this is something that's brought up an awful lot in my realm, which is, when is there another contractor? Well, unfortunately, if you're not on the PAYE scheme of the principal contractor, you are seen as a separate contractor. Principal designer and designers will be, again, appointed in writing by the client. And designers, are you loss adjusters? Well, we see them as different. We see loss adjusters as loss adjusters and just dealing with the finances, where designers are actually influencing how the actual project is run. Principal designer is usually where myself sit and my unit, the CDM unit of Crawford & Co. Oh, sorry, I'm going to go back to the contractors on this. Principal contractor, he will run the actual site and the contractors will work underneath, but meeting the actual principles of health and safety via the principal contractor. Duty holders, well, we've got good old clients. He has to appoint in writing the principal contractor, and as I said, if there is multiple contractors used, then you must appoint a principal designer. Also, the client must provide pre-construction information. If they've got anything then they need to tell the principal designer or the principal contractor, they must do so. Duty holder, principal designer. Well, we've got to possess the knowledge, experience and qualifications to undertake the principal designer role. Myself, I put myself through the Association of Project Safety Qualification as PD. I found this most helpful, and I found the actual process very enlightening, because just when you thought you knew everything, there was other things that I hadn't thought of that were brought up in the course. We must provide pre-construction information to the principal contractor in way of pre-construction information. We do it as a pack to ensure that the actual contractor has as much information as possible. We must monitor the health and safety element of the project and advise the client if there's anything that they need to know. I find the relationship with the contractors is the most paramount thing that we actually do. We must speak to them. Also, actually just getting on with them and understanding how their business works. It's really helped me to actually conduct my role as a principal designer. At the end of the project, I always ask the contractors to provide me with all the paperwork surrounding the health and safety on that site, and then we collate the health and safety file for the client, and we send actually the pack out to the policy holder. They can keep safe, and I understand when you sell your house now, it's something that you're asked for. Good old principal contractor. These are the guys at the sharp end of any project. In the construction phase, they will have to deal with everything from welfare right through to dealing with the policy holder and sometimes the insurance company as well. But from our point of view, they deal with us as principal designer and surveyors. So they're juggling many balls, and we must understand that. I believe that a joint approach with the principal contractor and the principal designer is the positive way forward. They must maintain a safe and secure construction site. They must communicate effectively with all the duty holders, and that means every one of them. It's not a unilateral thought process. It is a case if they've come up with something that's a little bit different, or they want some advice that they can approach the principal designer and at times the client. They actually collate all the information that we need: electrical certificates, gas certificates, building control certificates, and make sure that they can send them through to us so we can create the health and safety file. I make a great point of being able to do each part of my unit's operations, so I know the problems that we are going through, and if I see that any of the principal contractors' duties are not fulfilled. Duty holder, the actual designer. Now, this is the person that can be an architect, can be a surveyor. They've actually got an invested part in the process of the project. Provide information to assist the project, and that means what they're going to do and how they it can be how they're going to alter things. Is it going to be safe? How they're going to do things? I've had a couple of projects just recently that have meant us going above water, and I found it quite difficult, especially the way the designer looked at it. So we had to negotiate, and it's all about making sure that we do the right thing and get it also through to everybody that we want to promote compliance. We want to be positive. We don't want to be the negative part of health and safety as some people see us. Again, we're going to communicate with everybody. We like our designers to have a knowledge and understanding of CDM 2015. And we like them to get involved in every part. I think the actual process of CDM 2015 should bring us all together. It tells us to communicate, and I think this is the way forward. Our contractors, well, they used to be known as subcontractors. I think it's quite healthy we got rid of the sub name, and we are dealing with them as fellow contractors. They must adhere to CDM 2015, same as everybody else. They must engage with all the principles of the principal contractor and all the rules and regulations and the processes that they adhere to. We'd like everybody to have a forward and positive thinking approach around health and safety, and we don't want it to be onerous. We want it to be second nature as such. I hope that helps everybody see where we are and where we're coming from. But the one that really sticks out in my mind and is a daily occurrence is when people from insurance companies, loss adjusters, etc., ask me for my opinion on the use of more than one contractor, because they think that principal contractor, I've got my contractor and everybody who works underneath them, that's just under that one contractor system. Unfortunately not. If you bring in an electrician, they work for themselves, plumber, roofing, scaffolding, anything like that, and they work for themselves. Unfortunately, you are then exceeding the single contractor level, and you have to bring in a principal designer, and they must be appointed by the client in writing. Our CDM unit, who, well, I'm the manager of, we actually act as principal designer in many of the cases, unless they're very, very simple, and the contractor that's actually conducting it uses all his own staff, and they're all on the books as such, paying their tax by PAYE. Health and safety file, I think this is the one, even back to 2007, as always, maybe chuckle a little bit that we ensure that everything's done correctly. We get all the certificates together, and then the contractors sometimes forget to do the health and safety file, or they get all the paperwork together and forget to send it to us. This is understandable. These things happen, and it's like any type of education. It's a bit about nurturing and saying, come on guys, we need this. We have a chase system, so as soon as the contractors have finished, we give them a fortnight to get their paperwork together, and then we ask them for all of it as we can send it to the policy holder in a timely fashion, collated, and in a way that they can actually store it safely. We look for information such as any of the new drawings, plants and equipment that was used, safe escape and egress from maintaining problems. We find this on commercial premises mainly, where we got these lovely architects who've created things and it's very hard to maintain, or using certain types of product that are hard to maintain or clean. I also like to see fire drawings, especially in my past. I've seen many horrific fires, unfortunately, and I like to make it very clear the access and egress points, and on commercial premises I like to see a good fire plan. Again, these are my personal thoughts, and I welcome anybody who's got any other thoughts as well. Now, good old HSE, they brought out a lovely 3 to 5 year plan. I read it with bated breath. And what did we find? Construction design management was one of the headlines. I welcomed it. I really do, because I think if we can make sure that construction sites throughout Great Britain are a lot safer, the better we would be. We've got our own families that go onto site, we've got our loved ones that go to work, and we want to make sure that they're all safe and secure, and to make sure that when they go onto site that they're actually being looked after by the employers, and the employees are adhering to their employers' requisites and rules and regulations. I find that the bigger sites, again, easier to manage, and they've got some very good processes there. We find it harder on refurbishment sites, and I'm not knocking the contractors in any shape or form. I think they do a wonderful job. They just need better support, and it's people like us as principal designers and the size of our company and the organisation of IOSH to support the contractors and guide them in the right direction. And taking time out like I've done today, it's been an absolute pleasure, because it allows me to give my angle on it as such. I'm sure there's many people out there that would have a totally different outlook on what I've just said, and that's why I always make sure I say it's in my opinion. If you have any questions, please send them through on the webinar. Ben is busy jotting them down at the moment, and I will answer them in due course. Thank you very much for listening. I look forward to answering your questions. I'll put you over to Ben.
Okay, thank you very much, Jason. We will start going through some of these questions. Quite a few have come through. Just before we do start going through the questions, I'm just going to quickly launch a poll. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a few moments, so it should be on your screen now, just taking a few moments just to complete the questions that are on there. We obviously use it for feedback purposes. To obviously improve future webinars. So yes, if you wouldn't mind taking a few moments, and we'll start looking at the questions now, and we'll get cracking on answering those. So just bear with us for 10 seconds or so. Right. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone, for sending those polls back. Obviously, like I said, we'll leave it open until everyone's responded. We're going to crack on with some questions for Jason now. So we're going to start with this first one here, which someone has asked: is there any guidance on what size of project would determine if it was a CDM project? So, for example, over a certain amount of persons on site. Obviously, for small construction companies like ours, we wouldn't need principal designers.
Okay, thank you for that question. Firstly, all construction projects in the UK require CDM. Whether you did the CDM or you bring somebody else in to do the CDM, it's up to you, but it's the actual employment of the contractors. If they all actually work for you directly, and it's a domestic property, then you can do your own CDM, or you can bring in an outside body. They won't be seen as a contractor, a health and safety advisor maybe, to do that for you.
Excellent, thank you very much for that. So we have another one here as well. So Sandra here has asked, does the PD have to be a qualified architect? Sorry, hold on. So thank you for that. Okay, so Sandra has asked here, does the PD have to be a qualified architect?
Hi, Sandra. No, I'm not a qualified architect. It has to be somebody with a suitable knowledge, training, experience. Different project. There isn't one project that's the same as the next. I suit refurbishment and new build, where other people, especially when you're dealing with listed buildings, you would require a more architect-based person, somebody with knowledge of how to deal with those type of properties.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So another question here has come through. So with relations to both the PC and PD role. So if undertaking a PC and PD role as a single entity, so a dual role, for example, should each appointment be a separate appointment, or can it be a single appointment? So, for example, single letters or two letters, etc., etc.
I'm a bit of a belt and braces person. I'm so sorry. I would like to see it in two, but I understand it can be in one. Again, this is just my opinion. I enjoy the thought of making sure it's very clear in writing what you're actually doing on the project.
Okay, great. So another one here. What is the difference between the PD role under CDM 2015 and the previous planning supervisor and CDM coordinator?
Having been a CDMC in the past, I think a PD has got far more involvement, far more influence. The planning officer before was a great organiser. the CDMC kept an eye on all the health and safety. I think they've been put together quite nicely. I think a good principal designer should be able to be very maneuverable, adjustable, and be able to negotiate throughout the project with everybody involved in the project. Health and safety, at the end of the day, is what I would say is one of the most important roles out there in the workplace today.
Okay, coming back to PDs again. So someone here has asked, do you need principal designer appointed when where non-notifiable work?
Yeah, as I said in the actual presentation, if there's more than one contractor, we need to get a principal designer appointed, and that person must have knowledge, skills, experience, and qualifications if they got them. That's all the more helpful. And as I said, there's courses run by the Association of Project Safety that will get you there. Very interesting 2-day course with an exam as well, and the ability to join the APS afterwards.
Okay, so Michael here has asked, domestic work, how do you manage builders who have not heard of CDM?
This is a bit harsh, but don't appoint them. I wouldn't, every builder that I come across, both professionally and socially, know all about CDM. Some may need some guidance on it, and there's people out there that will guide them, health and safety advisors, etc. Also, I understand it's part of our code of conduct that we should, if anybody asks, give them the information. I can't believe that anybody in this day and age hasn't heard of CDM, whether it's the 2007 regs or the new 2015. Although I shouldn't say new, it's been out for over 2.5 years.
Okay, great. So the question that we've still got plenty coming in, so we're going to continue working through these. The next one that's come in is, why does the industry not fully implement the regulation on smaller sites? And also, why is the HSE not committing to assisting with CDM? This person said it feels like the regs are so open to interpretation that they will not be that they will be misunderstood.
I thoroughly concur with what you've just said. I'm under the impression that they will be policing more sites, especially with their 3 to 5 year plan. They will be looking at refurbishment of sites right through to new builds and major structural construction sites. One of the things that worried me when the regs came out, there was no ACOP, and they put the guidance document. I understand the HSE are coming away from ACOPs, and they're going to be giving more guidance documents. I understand they say it's to allow more freedom of thought, but as I said, I live by looking at the cases and the breaches that come through and learning off them and hoping that we are complying. We like to think we're very compliant in our industry, and maybe and hopefully leading the way, because at the end of the day, the regulations are there. Live up to them, be compliant to them, and then you'll keep yourself away from falling into breaches and being prosecuted.
Okay, so someone here has said that they work within civils and have multiple sites throughout city centres. So can you please clarify the regulations state on welfare facilities for our operators?
Excellent point. One we suffer from as much as anybody else. I think if we read Schedule 2 or 3 in Schedule 3 in Northern Ireland, it's clear that we must do as much as reasonably possible and practicable to adhere to that schedule. We have problems where we're not allowed to use the policyholders' facilities. We're unable to put anything bigger than a toilet outside, so we've got no resting areas, and that's where we have to think outside the box, unfortunately, because we can't put a welfare facility on a one-way system or a one-way road, etc. And I'm sure these are problems if you're doing civils in city centres and town centres, that you're coming up against this. My great belief is, again, do as much as you possibly can to meet the regs. Document everything. Document why you can't use the facilities that are on site, and why you've done what you have done. In other words, I have decided that over the road there is a cafe. The cafe are quite happy in writing to say that the guys can go in there, buy a cup of tea and rest and keep warm on their breaks. But we need that in writing, why they've done it, and that everybody's happy for them to use that. But I can't see many people allowing you to pop in, use the toilets, put your feet up, etc., and get away with that. Again, your operatives, if they're buying anything, you've got to support that by financing it. So again, it's all about doing as much as you can to meet the regulations.
Okay, great. So we've got one from Brian here. He says, "Hi, Jason. What do you see as the hierarchy of a small project fitting a gas oven for a customer to contractors on site gas and electricity? I have contacted them to install this appliance."
First thing, we've got the person who's instructed you, which will be the client. If you're just there on your own reconnaissance, in other words, you're not employing anybody else, then you will not need a principal designer. You'll be able to do that as a principal contractor. What I would say is make sure you're qualified and make sure you provide the suitable certification to go with that.
Okay, great. So another one's come in. I work in a theatre which uses an external designer to design stage sets, and we build the sets on site by our own staff. What roles would they play?
Right. Exterior designer. Okay, there will be designers. You will need, again, we've got to look towards who's employing who. If there's more than one contractor there, we've got to be, which I should think so, given my minor knowledge of theatres. I should think there's 2, maybe 3 other people involved there that aren't employed directly by the theatres. So we'll be looking at a full hierarchy from client, principal designer, principal contractor and contractors. I will see the guys actually creating the design as either being employed by the principal contractor or being a separate contractor.
Okay, great. How can clients be encouraged to ensure they appoint a PD at the correct time?
It's education, unfortunately, and it's education that isn't. It is free. Sorry, it is free from the HSE, but it's not widely known, as most of us will know. If you know about CDM, you know about it, and you know plenty of people who know about it as well. It's the people that look at you as if you're talking a different language when you mention CDM 2015. That's a problem, but it's all down to education and knowledge.
Okay, so say that's here. Who is ultimately responsible for the risk? For example, the asset owner, the client, or the contractor, the refurbishment. So with regards to the refurbishment of the dilapidated building.
This will be down to how your insurance is worded. It's about what you've insured for. What elements are there that are actually in place or not in place. Where liability lies is obviously the client has a liability to ensure that he appoints the rest of the CDM hierarchy correctly, and then obviously the principal contractor and the principal designer. Well, I always believe that a principal designer has the due diligence to deal with to make sure the health and safety is in place, and the principal contractor to understand what they're doing and to conduct the construction project in a safe and secure manner. And everybody looking after everybody else's liability to make sure that it's safely done and there isn't any incidents or accidents that will create an issue with liability.
Okay, great. We're going to continue coming through all these questions. I can see a lot of comments are coming in. It's obviously a very interesting subject in terms of people's opinions, so that's perfectly fine. We're going to continue working through as many of these as possible. I know we've still got a bit of time left. So the next one we're going to look at is what constitutes acceptable skills, knowledge, and experience to carry out or be appointed as a PD?
From my point of view, I had the luxury of going on sites when I was 16 before a lot of legislation was around, and I'll give away my age. In the middle to late 80s, there wasn't a lot of legislation adhered to. So I've been involved in sites from there, really. Health and safety wise, it's only been sort of the last 20 odd years that I've really got my head around that element of it. What constitutes knowledge, experience, is somebody that can actually understand what the regulations are, how to implement them on site, and make sure everybody's doing the right thing. I'm a great believer in getting qualifications, confirming you know what you're doing. It also helps with getting professional indemnity insurance. If put it this way, if it was a chap or lady who's just come on site and they're young people, but there's actually health and safety legislation around young people. So would they be suitable? Probably not, but that doesn't say they couldn't be that person without some good training, some good education, and some good guidance, because I'm a great believer, again, of experience, getting people out there and actually doing it. And you only gain experience by doing things. How to equate whether you are or not, there is some great written evidence on the HSE website and also through IOSH to say what would be reasonable to be allowed to be a principal designer.
Okay, have you any experience of dealing with the proportional approach when producing a construction phase plan for small or low risk construction jobs?
Yes, we have an amount of proportional ones that come through. I always, again, as long as it's a single contractor that I'm dealing with, and it is, we have small ground level painting and decorating jobs that come through. As long as I can see that people are doing the right thing, and the company on our network, we're very lucky because we vet all our companies to make sure that they have the rules and regulations in place and the accreditation as well to meet that. So it's quite easy for me to see sometimes when one of our contractors has turned around and said, it's just a bit of painting and decorating. We're going to have our feet on the ground, so there's no working at height. The access and egress is great. The policyholder is going to go away for the week. So it's really simple stuff. And I'm quite happy that a proportionate approach on that is the way forward, which is let's have a low level CPP and let the people get on with it. And I think that covers the base there.
Okay. Coming to PD responsibility, what is the extent of the PD responsibility to monitor the project they have been employed on?
With the PD's role, firstly, it should be due diligence all the way up to when the actual principal contractor takes control of the site. And then we need to ensure, depending on what type of project it is, how much support, guidance, and even inspections need to be put in place. I'd like to see the principal contractor to provide a lot of the internal inspections and monitoring, such as ensuring PASMA trained people are covering the scaffolding, just for example, ladder inspections, etc. And also making sure that people are trained to use the PPE and are actually using it, and it's being maintained, and the principal contractor is quite happy to maintain and keep that up, because these are the things I see on sites that, and not just ours, it's many others that I've been around, and you're going to see great PPE in the huts, but as soon as you go on site, there's things missing like hard hats, decent gloves, facial masks, and in this day and age of silica dust, we've got to be careful.
Okay, is there a basic template available which would help people to create their own CDM for each construction project? And also, is there guidance on what is a CDM site and what is not?
As I said, all construction sites come under the CDM regulations. Yes, there are sites out there on the web that can provide you with CPP templates, but remember, you can't create a CPP without pre-construction information, and that's another thing a lot of people forget. They go around using a bit of guesswork when really you need to look into, depending on the size of site and what you're actually doing, what's the history behind the building, what's the history behind the area, the location, how you get in and out. And people who aren't experienced in this sometimes need an outside provider, health and safety advisor, to support them. But if you wish to have a go alone, I'm not going to knock you for that. Please read up, do your due diligence and making sure that you're doing the right thing and you are the suitable person to be doing it. Remember the knowledge, skills and experience I mentioned earlier.
Okay, there are plenty more questions in the Q&A box which we're still working through. If you do have any questions that you're putting into the chat box, because it might be worth just copy and paste those into the Q&A box so that we've got them in there rather than in the chat box, as there is quite a lot of discussion going on in there. So the next question that we've got here is, I know there is no ACOP, but what do we think the biggest gaps in the guidance are?
My point of view, and it's like the person who brought up the earlier question about welfare, I'd like to see some latitude given around welfare where problems arise around city centres, etc. And I can't see that getting any better in the short term. I can see that actually getting worse as we're creating more complex cities and then more complex areas and road structures. I think that there should be, again, far more detail in the regulations around the use of when to use the PD, especially around a single contractor, and when a single contractor job is not a single contractor job, when you start employing people outside of your business and they're not on your PAYE. I think they could do a fair bit more there. But then, yeah, be aiming towards more of an ACOP, and it seems the HSC are avoiding it.
Okay. Someone has asked here, who has overall responsibility for managing the health and safety of the site during construction?
Both the PD and the PC. Because it's the principal contractor's site, they have the ultimate responsibility. PD's there to give them the structure and tell them what to do. We, on all of our sites where we use this PD, I monitor the construction phase plans to ensure that they meet our requirements and legislation, and we support the contractors to do so. This is where I think the relationship between a PD and a PC is paramount. We should be looking towards promoting that, and if there are difficulties on sites around health and safety, and the PC is not, the principal contractor is not confident on dealing with them, then they should be talking to the principal designer immediately.
When you talk about more than one contractor, does this include people that work for them, or are they self-employed?
As we mentioned earlier, if anybody works for the principal contractor on a PAYE basis, then they are seen as a principal contractor's employee. As soon as they are self-employed in any shape or form, then they become a separate contractor.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I must say it is very interesting to see just the amount of comments that are coming through. It's great to see you all having lively debates and discussions through this, so I'm hoping that you're finding it useful. We're just going to have a little look at some more questions now. We've got a little bit of time left. So someone has come in here. Do you find that clients and or the PDs appoint a non-regulation role CDM advisor to assumingly pass over their regulation role responsibilities of the former CDM-C role? Should we bring back the CDM-C role?
Very good question. We've gone forward now, and we can't. There's no point going back to the CDM-C role, I feel. I think there should be maybe a separate part to the hierarchy for a health and safety advisor. Somebody that is very much focused on health and safety to support the principal designer. I'm lucky because I've got a health and safety background and also in the construction industry, so I'm blessed as such, but there are PDs out there that aren't, and this is where they should bring in a health and safety advisor as a minimum. Clients, I don't expect clients to be a font of all knowledge, for the simple reason that's why the hierarchy was brought about. It's to actually instruct people to do parts of the project for them, and it should be the duties of the principal designer, if they feel that they are wanting in any area, then to bring in experts in to support them.
Okay, so under CDM 2015, can a principal contractor appoint another contractor as a principal contractor and delegate that responsibility?
As far as I read it, no.
Okay, short and sweet.
Sorry.
Okay, so another one that's come in here. The CDM regs are not there to document everything. He's saying, strongly disagree. It surely must be about communication and coordination. So do you agree with the gap where there are now CDM advisors taking up roles in the construction industry?
Do I agree with it? I have no great issue with bringing in experts to support. I do like things documented because, simple reason, if anything goes wrong, God forbid, then we can actually have a line of evidence, chain of evidence there, that we can prove what's been done and what's not. Because the worst thing to happen is we get it inspected, or there's an incident and the HSE are involved. They come around and they ask you a question and say, yeah, I did tell Jonathan there to do this or do that, and they didn't do it. Well, prove it. And this is one of the problems people have, is communicate, great, fantastic, but please make a note of what's been communicated, because if you don't and something goes wrong, then where's the proof?
Okay. Someone here has asked that regarding the requirement for the client to provide pre-construction information, is this always existing information, or is the client expected to go out and collect information in advance of the construction phase?
I believe it's up to the client to actually set their stall out and how much they're going to invest in the project, both financially and physically. What we need to know is where services are, if they know anything that we need to know about where things were before we came onto site, such as we've had things in the past like where they filled in a swimming pool and it wasn't done properly. And is it safe to go and put a 5-ton excavator over the top of it? And then we've had problems with Japanese knotweed, and nobody told us that the next door neighbour had problems with it. And we went onto site and found out there was an extreme problem. It's these sort of things we need to know, the intricacies of a house or of a location, because without it, we could start doing the pre-construction information. We'll be going off half-cocked as such because we didn't know about everything. I'm a great believer in sharing as much knowledge as you possibly can, and then you don't come up with surprises that can be costly in the future.
Okay, great. Someone has asked a question that I can actually answer, and that is, will we be sending out a recording of the webinar? The answer to that is yes, we will be. It will either be sent out later on this afternoon or at some point tomorrow once we've got all the details. So I will email all of you individually with a copy of that, so you can download it and watch it back at any point. So someone here has actually said that unfortunately they arrived a bit late, so they're not sure whether this has already been covered or not. But dealing in rural properties with a large amount having access issues with its isolated nature, how do we ensure we have welfare facilities when services are cut off and the isolated nature of the property restricts the ability to get a welfare unit in?
Excellent question. One, unfortunately, we've come up against before. Organisation is the way forward. And if you can't get a full welfare unit onto site, can you get a portaloo? And I've got a funny feeling you may be able to. If you can get a portaloo on site, the immediate stuff like going to the toilet and going to the bathroom are covered. And the actual rest, keeping dry, etc., can be dealt with. You can move away from site as long as there is a vehicle on there to take them off. Again, doesn't actually fully meet to the letter of the law under the welfare Schedule 2 section of the regs, but make sure you document that this is why we've had to do this. And sometimes how we dealt with it, it was very handy. It was on an A road. There was a lay-by situated just at the road. We spoke to the highways and the council. They allowed us to put a welfare unit there, put a portaloo closer to the actual work site. And what happened was there were organised times when for breaks that they were took to the welfare unit. We've also, with the Carlisle floods, we were able to commission a empty property, which was obviously 3 or 4 doors down, and in one case a whole street down from the work site, but very accessible and within a couple of minutes walk. Again, it's all about organisation and also documenting why you're doing it.
Okay, so we'll have a couple more questions. We're coming towards the end of the session now. We've got one here that has come through. What is your opinion of the CITB app for construction phase plans?
Anybody who knows me will tell you that I'm not a great fan, but that's because I'm a great believer in the actual work that we do. Within the insurance industry and refurbishment, the actual app doesn't meet our needs. It works very well for very small projects that one might want to undertake themselves or with friends and want to create maybe a feature or something out in their back garden. well, that's great, that's fine. But for our needs, it doesn't meet them, unfortunately.
Okay, great. In this day and age, there are numerous welfare facilities that can be hired or utilised in the vast majority of scenarios. So the client has the duty to ensure adequate welfare. PC has a duty to provide it. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. There's some fantastic bits of kit out there nowadays. I recently saw one in Wales. One of our contractors actually made a great point of taking me onto site to show it. They're not cheap to hire and not cheap to buy, but it was one of the best 6 to 8 man units I've seen. Yes, it is the client's responsibility that the principal contractor provides this. It's actually laid out in the regulations that the client should support the principal contractor in providing welfare facilities. In our cases with refurbs, etc., we usually get in writing confirmation from the policyholder that the contractors can use the facilities, whether it's just the resting and keep and dry facilities, or it's the bathroom as well. And if the bathroom isn't allowed, we sometimes, most of the time, we go and put a portaloo outside. It's a case of mix and matching sometimes to meet the regs, but definitely it is the duty of all, really, to make sure the regs are met, and that includes welfare.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask one question here that I'm not sure. I think we covered it a bit earlier in one of the questions, but I'm going to ask it. This is from Adam, and he has asked, where a client collects pre-construction information, is this existing information, or is it information which is expected to be collected specifically in advance of the construction phase?
It can be existing. I always find, especially from the client basis, it's usually knowledge, things that they've had done on the property before, or where a neighbour's had a similar project done, or an issue they've had and they've had to have a refurbishment, issues that they've found. And it's basically sharing of information. The one thing I must say about the regs, and they really push it, is communication. And I'm a massive supporter of that people should share information, not only on the health and safety point of view, but the whole construction, to ensure it's safe and it's completed in a timely and safe manner.
Okay, great. Just one final thing to add to that one, sort of follows on from the question, but specifically, what about the provision of asbestos information? Is it okay to provide existing information, or should additional information be collected by the client?
I take it that you may have a property with asbestos in it. I'm a great I say this quite a lot. I'm a great believer. Don't forget, this is my opinion, but it's a very secure opinion, which is, if you think there's an ACM on a property, get it tested. And you can't look at it and say whether it's not. It's got to go to a laboratory, and it's got to be checked, because you go into a premises with asbestos and you haven't took precautions, then you will have a problem both with legislation, but don't forget, we've got a moral duty. We've got to look after our employees, and I'm a great believer that we should look after all, especially on CDM, anything to do with construction and building sites. Asbestos is thought to be in there. Right, let's find out where it is. Has it been breached? Has it been checked? There's something called a refurbishment and demolition survey. Have one of those then. It's an R&D. Again, I'm a bit belt and braces, but I like them to be done when there's any thought there might be asbestos on site.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We are going to have to draw to a close there, as we've now run out of time. There are quite a lot of questions. It's obviously a topic that quite a lot of people have got opinions on, and so we will look through all of those questions. Obviously, things that we haven't had chance to answer, we will try and put some written responses to those questions, which we'll post online along with a copy of the recording and the presentation itself. For all of you who have attended, I hope you found the session worthwhile. Thank you obviously very much, Jason, for coming in and delivering the session. As I said, we will have a recording of this available for you if you do want to play it back. We'll be sending out, I'll be sending out an email to all of you in the next day or so with all of the details. But all that's really left for me to say now is thank you very much for attending, and I hope you have a good afternoon, and fingers crossed we'll see you at the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.